Hi everybody, my name is Valeria Camerino and I'm the editor of Security Advisor Middle East. Here with us today we have a panel of experts that will discuss identity and access management. I would like to ask all of you to briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your role.
I'm Gillian Ormiston. I'm Director of Business Development for Identification Solutions for Morpho. That means I try to be a horizontal resource between potential customers, existing customers, and our product development teams.
Right.
Yeah. Fadi Mutlaq, I'm the leader of security and privacy in the Middle East with Deloitte, managing services across 17 countries in the region, anywhere from identity and access management to security management, vulnerability management, those types of services.
Well, I'm Gulan Teksud. I'm the Channel Technology Officer for the emerging markets in Symantec. It covers part of security with the latest acquisition of VeriSign software, now the part of the ID and authentication business as well.
Thank you very much for being with us today. There has been an increasing demand for identity and access management services across the region. Why is that? What are the key reasons behind this boom?
Sure. I mean, what we've seen through some of the surveys and through speaking to our clients is that it's a combination of things, starting first and foremost with the complexity of the business environment today. Organizations are running multiple information systems. They rely heavily on these systems. We have computer-dominant environments. That in combination with the regulation that's coming out through central banks, through central governments, is making the operation and accountability of accounts and organizations increasingly difficult with increasingly overhead. And the combination of those things is requiring a solution that can address these regulatory issues and these operational issues.
So what are the key technologies and applications within this segment?
I think if you look at it, I mean, the main driver, just like Fadi said, we have the compliance coming in, and also we have the complexity of the infrastructure, we have the mobility, we have the mergers. If you look at the key identifier, key technologies, we have the PKI solution, we have certificates, we have central sign-on systems, and this is, I think if you look at it, the bottom line is all about trusting the user, trusting the information. We have the website certificates, we have the single sign-on, we have the one-time password technology that we use. And of course, at the top of everything for the financial sector, there comes the fraud detection.
Sure.
And in this area, we can actually also apply biometrics and extend the single identity of the user, shall we say, into access control to the building, to different zones in the building, and you can have smart cards which can have different services within an organization. So not only access to the actual offices that they work in, but also to lunches, to the healthcare provider, for example,
Sure.
if you've got a company health insurance scheme, and to other services, you're parking your car and various things like that. So you can add in access to systems and fraud detection from that point of view to actually extending to a whole range of services within an organization. And those types of things can also be extended to not just an organization, but to a range of organizations under the same umbrella. So it could be an association, for example, an industrial association, or to a government. So you can actually have an identity card, which again allows you to have multiple services stored on the card. E-health, e-voting, access to social benefits, and even border crossing. So you can add different services onto a single identity. The main issue here is you need to be sure of a unique identity before you start the process, and I think that's key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fadi, would you like to expand a bit on the key issues around identity management?
Sure. I mean, I think as Gillian wisely put it, it's about establishing accountability ultimately. You know, as we've said before, regulatory requirements of organizations, good business, good information security. If we want to take the fundamentals of information security, talking about things like confidentiality, the integrity and availability of information, those are at the foundation of managing information within any organization. And so when we keep that in mind, creating the accountability on how people are accessing information, whether they're accessing it appropriately, whether they should have those rights, whether as an organization we're following the principle of least privileges, those are probably the key issues that are driving this necessity in the environment or in the markets today.
There is a lot of internal fraud within organizations, and it's quite often very difficult to determine until accidentally it's discovered. And there have also been organizations who have discovered they've been actually paying a salary to the same person maybe 3 or 4 times if they're working part-time out of different offices, which sounds amazing, but that's what happens. And only by having an identity management policy for the organization do you actually start to manage that process and actually build an infrastructure, which is very easy then to have access for every employee or individual in a country.
Absolutely right. Bulent, how the rise of social networking is impacting the enterprise?
Well, actually it is, but we know there are about 530 million users on social networking sites all over the internet. So we know for a fact that even enterprises depend on social networking, let it be advertising, let it be commercial purposes, but they do communicate with their clients, their customers, employees on the social networking. And of course it brings some problems as well, because we know for a fact the users of social networking sites, they tend to share too much information. And when this, especially for a company, on behalf of a company, there might become a problem. And of course that comes in the question how we actually make sure that the confidential data of our enterprise is confidential. It's all about the quadrants of data at rest, data in motion, and of course the user access management come into play as well.
Yeah, what's shocking is many organizations don't actually have a policy regarding social networking. And as Bulent said, there's a tremendous amount of intellectual property that's being shared on these social networking sites, and that's where identity and access management can play a huge role by managing the process, identifying who should have access to what and how they have access to those systems. Ultimately save organizations tremendous losses from a fraud perspective. Again, intellectual property rights that are being out there, reputational damage that can be done through these social networking sites is tremendous.
Following up on this, how is the cloud computing changing the way, basically the company access and the identity management policy? What's the impact of the cloud?
Cloud computing yet affects the domain that we actually operate in. We're beginning to think about how do we survive and how can we deliver a product or a service within that area. But from the large majority of customers are governments or larger institutions like banks and places like that where cloud may affect. But it's an interesting phenomenon, and brain thinking within that area.
And actually, it's
might be
secure. That policy, you're able to identify. You have to think, but you can't how you store them.
I think then at the implementing that identity and access management solution, how we intend on having our users access the systems. To answer those questions, you need to start with policies.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think at the top, at the bottom of the whole policy line, with a business side already, what is the risk appetite for the user? Of course, there comes the technology side. You can select from multiple technologies based on how much risk you're willing to take. But in order to be all discussed, it should be manageable at the same time, because increasing security in the business versus spot.
Different pieces and to distinguish them from customers, because banking are also customers, and so